Yields. Chair recognizes Mr. Burlison from Missouri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Professor Hu, it's been talked about a lot in this hearing about the potential threats and risks of foreign actor getting access to Americans' DNA records. Can you elaborate on what is the potential risks that we are facing?
Yes, some of the risks include, for example, blackmail, using it in order to exploit and try to make individuals more vulnerable, greater surveillance risks, and as was discussed, potential biochemical, biometric types of warfare. But I do think that there's also potential AI-driven targeting risks as well.
Mm-hmm. And then, this isn't new. I mean, the hospitals, providers, their electronic medical records they're attempted to be hacked all the time. Have you heard of what the street value of someone's medical record is?
Well,
at one point I'd heard that it's over $50,000 or more. It's probably a lot more today. Mr. Savage, one of my questions has to do with how the hack occurred in 2023. Is it correct that individuals who had stolen, passwords from other businesses then used that in a form that's called stuffing, where they used an automated system to take, say, the hacked passwords and accounts from another company, and then just rolled through those to see if those same passwords were used on your site? Am I getting that accurately?
That's generally accurate. It is something called credential stuffing, whereby a user, and we all have done this, is use the same username and password on multiple websites.
Right.
And other websites were hacked, and they were able to obtain those usernames and passwords, and then they tried them on 23andMe, and they were able to access a number of accounts to get into and take the DNA relative information.
And so the mechanisms that you've put in place to stop that from happening in the future are that you check to see, you send a text message to verify that somebody's logging in from that was the original individual, or what other steps do you take?
Right after the cybersecurity incident, the first thing we did was force every consumer to reset their password. Mm-hmm. And as part of that process—
They couldn't use the previous one.
They couldn't use the previous one, and we also checked that password against known hacked passwords, right? Just to make sure that, the same thing wasn't going to be happening with another credential stuffing.
I think if the American people are listening, you should never use the same password for different website businesses.
Yeah, that's a very good
just
process,
a good
right?
policy to follow.
And then second, you also mentioned we did also implement two-factor authentication, whereby either, basically we actually then either sent the customer a text message or an email confirming that it was them, and they entered that code to make sure that there was an additional layer of security, a second factor to access their account.
Thank you. Ms. Wuchitsky, is that correct? I think that one of the things that's kind of striking me is that when someone enters into an agreement, they know your company, they know your reputation, they know you. I think what we're kind of going through is a situation where potentially what the trust that was placed in you because of this situation is in jeopardy if somebody else gets access to that information. The question is, what will they do with that? So one of my questions is, do you think that there should be a law that upon the sale of a business that an individual has to reconfirm that they want that company to have, the new company to have access to their data?
Thank you for that question. I'm a huge believer that people should have choice and transparency. So I think it's a complicated question, the one you just asked, because there's individuals, for instance, like my sister, who recently passed away of lung cancer, who established a lung cancer community in 23andMe and feels very passionately about identifying genetic risks for non-smoking lung cancer. So she is deceased. Mm-hmm. She opted in to research because she really cared about that mission. And it was really important for her to be able to do, lung cancer is massively underfunded. It is one of the poorest funded areas. So how could we all come together? So how could she possibly reconsent?
I just had one more question. So when a separate company that you've created had a contract with and you shared some of that data, what mechanisms do you have to protect and make sure that company is not then reselling it and sharing that data?
That would have been part of the contract. So, for example, with GSK, they were looking at aggregate statistics. They could not go and then share that with other partners.
Okay, thank you. I yield back.
Chair now recognizes Ms. Presley